Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This story is about what if Sung Jin-Woo never got the system. Before we start, please support the channel with likes and comments. Subscribe and share this video. Let's dive in. The rain fell thick and cold over the sprawling city, misting the neon lights into hazy streaks of color. In narrow, forgotten backstreets where few dared linger, walked a man with a name that stung the tongues of hunters and civilians alike, Sung Jin-Woo. To most, he was a joke, a specter of failure, destined to remain the weakest hunter. Born under a cruel shadow, he bore the weight of scorn with quiet resolve. Jin-Woo's footsteps echoed faintly on the cracked pavement as the city's towering skyscrapers loomed like guardians of a world he was never meant to conquer. His clothes, worn and patched, clung to a body hardened by neglect but not yet broken. Each step was a testament to survival against insurmountable odds. Around him, the world moved differently. The streets bustled with hunters basking in newfound strength given by the system, an otherworldly power that granted abilities, leveling up, and immortality in the face of monstrous threats. But Jin-Woo had never seen that glowing window. His soul bore no mark of destiny. He was just a man, frail, fragile, and alone. Even so, Jin-Woo refused to bow. A city killer lurked in the underbelly, a dungeon known only in whispers as the dungeon without mercy. It twisted beneath the streets, a maw of eternal darkness gnashing with teeth sharper than blades. Its walls dripped with forgotten blood, and its corridors were home to creatures most monstrous. For the gifted hunters blessed with the system, the dungeon was but a trial, a stage to show power and evolve. For Jin-Woo, it was a nightmare made real. He entered at nightfall, alone, stepping past the glowing seals that barred most from entry. Without the system's guiding light or enhanced abilities, the darkness stretched infinitely, swallowing sound and hope. Every breath was a struggle. Every heartbeat a countdown. The floor beneath him was slick and uneven, dust stirred by unseen movements. Shadows danced like malicious spirits, teeth gleaming with predatory hunger. The dungeon roared with silent threat, pressing its sinister will upon anyone daring to venture inside. Monsters moved from the walls and floors with terrifying speed, clawed beasts with eyes like burning coals, serpents writhing beneath shattered stone, and towering horrors dripping with venomous slime. Jin-Woo fought them back not with magic but with blade. Each strike rang hollow against the darkness, yet was fueled by a will stronger than steel. Pain blossomed through his muscles, blood dripped, and breath came ragged, but the weak hunter forced himself forward. This dungeon was not his grave. It was his crucible. Inside, time stretched. Long, grueling hours blurred into a relentless march of survival. Jin-Woo fought not for glory, not for leveling up, but simply to live another day. Every wound was a lesson, every narrow escape a quiet victory. Those who had power called him foolish. Those with strength called him dead weight. But Jin-Woo's eyes remained focused, not on miracles bestowed, but on resilience earned. Night after night, he faced death in forms both familiar and alien. He learned the patterns of shadows, the rhythms of claws, and found ways to turn his frailty into advantage. Each scuffle sharpened his senses, honed his instincts. But survival came with scars deeper than flesh. In the solitude of abandoned safehouses, Jin-Woo's thoughts churned with ghosts. Friends lost in deadly battles. Promises broken by fate. The silent screams of those who had fallen weighed unbearably on his conscience. The taste of survivors, guilt was bitter and cold, gnawing away at the fragile hope that kept him moving forward. Yet, from this anguish came a fierce determination. Not for power, but to honor the memories of those who could no longer fight. To prove that even the weakest hunter could cast a shadow long and dark enough to change the world. As dawn crept over the city skyline, Sung Jin-Woo returned from the dungeon without mercy, every muscle screaming in protest. His battered hands gripped the crude blade he had managed to keep intact, not a weapon bestowed by the mysterious system, but one earned through sheer perseverance and countless sleepless nights of practice. In the harsh reality of his world, swords made with metal and sharpened with grit mattered more than magic. He knew this all too well. Back at his cramped apartment, Jin-Woo laid out tattered maps and worn-out manuscripts on the wooden table. Ancient texts detailing forgotten martial arts techniques, battle strategies from past warriors long lost to history, they were his textbooks. Without the power of the system to guide his growth or offer shortcuts, his progress depended solely on the blood and steel of disciplined practice. His reflection stared back at him in a cracked mirror, sunken eyes, bruised face, yet burning with relentless determination. A hunter without miracles, but not without hope. He repeated strikes in the dim light, perfecting each swing with painstaking precision. Pain was a language he learned to read, and through it, his body began to transform, a silent metamorphosis from weakness towards strength. The nights were restless, he spent hours reshaping his mind as much as his body. Studying the behavior of monsters, memorizing gate layouts, practicing escape routes, and perfecting ambush tactics. Every lesson learned was a weapon sharper than any blade. Through the bitter cold and burning heat of countless trials, an unyielding spirit took root. It was not just survival, it was defiance. Jin-Woo knew that power would come only to those willing to trade blood and sweat without complaint. Where others relied on gifts from beyond, he carved his own legacy through relentless effort. A few nights later, Jin-Woo found himself kneeling beside the flickering flame of a campfire, surrounded by hunters society had cast aside, outcasts and rejects, much like himself. Among them were broken warriors, exiled mages, and forgotten fighters. Together, they had no system-backed powers, no towering fame, only the will to fight. The group was wary of Jin-Woo at first, their eyes sharp with skepticism. But his leadership soon proved undeniable. Against the encroaching darkness and the monsters that prowled beneath the city, survival was a team effort. Their missions were not glorious battles, but desperate raids on low-ranking gates no one else would touch. Yet each success, no matter how small, built camaraderie and respect. Jin-Woo forged hard bonds through shared struggle. He trained tirelessly with his new comrades, exchanging knowledge and tactics, raising the collective strength of the outcasts. Days bled into weeks, and whispers of the shadowless hero began to ripple through the hunter community. This was no story of miracles, but one of raw human tenacity, hunters standing tall in the face of despair. Despite the slow growth and constant danger, Jin-Woo's reputation drew attention, both benevolent and malevolent. Among the shadows lurked eyes watching his rise. From the darkness beyond the known gates stepped an ancient force, the Shade Regent, a monarch forged in enigma and power. A being who understood the hunger for strength better than any mortal, it sought to claim Jin-Woo, tempting him with a monstrous offer, the power he was denied, the strength only a pawn of destiny could wield. But the regent demanded more than allegiance. It promised damnation cloaked in glory. In the heart of the city, Jin-Woo stood at a crossroads. Choosing the easy path meant selling his soul, rejecting it meant fighting not just monsters, but fate itself. His heart trembled but never broke. He chose to stand free. The final hunt arrived as a tempest. Gates ruptured violently, spilling forth shadows that twisted the night. Jin-Woo and his band of outcasts became humanity's last hope against annihilation. The battle was brutal, a whirlwind of steel, fire, and shattered dreams. Jin-Woo moved with the desperation of a man who had lost everything but refused to lose his soul. His blade sang a song of survival, fighting through pain and sacrifice. When the dust settled, Jin-Woo's name was etched in legend, not as a blessed warrior, but as a man who fought with courage born of humanity. The sun dipped low behind the city skyline, casting long shadows over buildings scarred by battles fought in silence. The term, hunter, had always meant more than just a title. It meant survival, sacrifice, and adapting to a world that cared little for weakness. For Sung Jin-Woo, every day was a test to defy the impossible. With no system to level him up or grant powers beyond mortal ken, Jin-Woo grew through sheer relentless willpower. Nights turned into weeks filled with relentless training, of pushing past pain barriers and breaking through doubt. The air in the training room was thick with sweat, muscles screamed refusal, but his spirit roared onward. Each day brought new challenges. Simple hunting expeditions turned into orchestrated missions where careful planning and acute observation meant the difference between life and death. Unlike the blessed hunters who could rely on overwhelming force, Jin-Woo's strength was in subtlety and strategy, the art of survival honed to a razor's edge. His mind became a weapon as sharp as any blade. He studied the movements and habits of monsters, learned how light and sound could deceive, how terrain could become an ally. He trained companions, taught the outcasts to fight smarter, not harder. Among the group, respect was hard-earned but fiercely guarded. Jin-Woo was no lofty leader, but a man who sweat and bled beside his comrades. He carried the burden of their hopes and failures alike. The monsters of the dungeons grew stronger, creeper and more cunning, twisting shadows taking shapes that defied logic. Yet Jin-Woo and his team met these threats with tenacity that stunned even the most powerful hunters. One evening, while crossing a decrepit city square, a monstrous entity emerged, a towering shadow with burning eyes and claws like scythes. The shadow beast let out a roar that shook windows and chilled hearts. Jin-Woo's team tensed, ready to disperse under the overwhelming odds. But Jin-Woo held firm. With a low voice that carried the weight of command, he organized a trap, commanding every movement with precision. They circled the creature, throwing firebombs to distract and create openings. Jin-Woo leapt from cover, blade flashing under dim streetlights, striking viciously at joints and vulnerable areas. The creature howled but fell, brought down by the unrelenting spirit of hunters who had no powers, only courage. Word of the battle spread, a beacon to those who felt powerless in a world ruled by superhuman strength. Despite growing strength and reputation, Jin-Woo's journey was not without cruel tests. Betrayal and corruption festooned the Hunter Association, secret factions who sought to control dungeons and gate loot. Jin-Woo found himself entangled in political webs, balancing the survival of his comrades against forces hungry for power at any cost. In dark corners of the city, he confronted hunters willing to murder for rank, alliances forged in shadow and broken in blood. Through it all, Jin-Woo's resolve hardened. He refused to let politics or treachery deter him from the path he had carved with sword and sweat. Each victory, each painful loss, shaped him, not into the king a system might have made, but into a leader who ruled not with power, but with unwavering resolve and humanity. As autumn's chill settled over the city, the legend of the shadowless hero began to take shape, not born of supernatural gifts, but from Jin-Woo's unflinching will and iron resolve. Where others saw a weakling, a cursed hunter without fortune, Jin-Woo's brief victories sparked sparks of hope just strong enough to light a fire. Around him gathered those left behind by the relentless march of fate, hunters who lacked the gift of the system, mercenaries with fractured spirits, clans forgotten by time. Together, they formed a ragtag alliance, bound by shared scars and the purpose to fight amidst stars descending to darkness. The world beneath the gleaming skyscrapers was changing. Dungeons, once rare and terrifying, grew more common and deadly. Monsters adapted, shadows grew deeper, and rumors reached ears that monarchs stirred in distant realms. But Jin-Woo and his comrades answered not with sorcery or kingship, but raw flesh, sharp steel, and tempered hearts. Days turned into months. The hunters fought guerrilla wars against creeping darkness. Small victories kept cities breathing, hope flickering. Tactical ambushes, close-quarter battles in twisting ruins, and daring escapes became their rhythm, their defiant anthem against a merciless world. Strangers became family, moments of camaraderie eclipsing the weight of hardship. Laughter returned to cracks in ruined walls, bonds stronger than magic wove a network of resilience. Jin-Woo stood at the center, not as a hero crowned by power, but as a symbol that strength could be chosen, earned, and multiplied by unity. Through these trials, Jin-Woo's fame grew, but so did the eyes watching from the shadows. One night, under the ghostly light of a waning moon, the Shade Regent returned, the spectral monarch whose cold invitation still echoed in promises of dark power. It appeared not as a tyrant seeking to conquer, but a tempter offering a crown forged in shadow in exchange for allegiance. The regent spoke in a voice like the rustling of dead leaves, whispering promises of strength, legacy, and dominion. To reject this power is to embrace oblivion, it warned, but to accept is to become the shadow that rules the night. Jin-Woo's heart pounded in quiet defiance. Such power came at an impossible price, his humanity. But the hunter's soul was forged through trials greater than Dark Monarch's schemes. No, he said simply. I will carve my own path beyond destiny's chains. This final defiance led to the battle that would cement Jin-Woo's name into legend. Gates exploded open like wounds in the earth, flooding the world with monstrous legions. Cities trembled as shadows rose to consume hope. Jin-Woo rallied his hunters of the shadowless, the outcasts, the forgotten, the last beacon amid swallowing night. Blades clashed, fire lit skies, and human will proved stronger than despair. The final hunt was not a glorious march of gifted gods, but a desperate stand of flesh and steel, sacrifice and bravery. Though shadows clawed and roared, Jin-Woo fought with a blazing spirit, guiding his allies through torment to survival, proving the truest power comes not from gifts or kingship, but from heart. As the smoke of battle settled and the echoes of the final hunt faded into legend, Sung Jin-Woo stood not as a man bound by fate, but as a symbol of unyielding resolve. His journey without the system's gift was far from over. The shadows still clung tightly, the monarchs still stirred in darkness, but a new chapter was about to begin. The dawn broke misty and gray over the battlefield where Jin-Woo and his comrades had pushed back the darkness. Yet even triumph bore the bitter taste of sacrifice. Many hunters lay wounded, some were lost forever. But Jin-Woo's spirit, unbroken and fierce, sparked a new flame for those who refused to bow. In the weeks that followed, Jin-Woo sought out knowledge and strength beyond the ruins of battle. The Hunter Association, a crumbling edifice of politics and secrets, proved just as dangerous as the monsters breathing beneath the earth. Corrupt factions and shadowy figures manipulated gates and power for their own ends. Jin-Woo walked carefully through this maze of intrigue, gaining allies from unexpected places and enemies hidden within trusted ranks. He learned that the monarchs awakening in the shadows were preparing for a war unlike any before, a war that would decide the fate of all humanity. His own power, limited though it was, became a beacon for the weak and forgotten, a rallying point for those forsaken by the system's blessing. Together, they built a fellowship of hunters with no magic but boundless courage. Amidst tense negotiations and skirmishes, Jin-Woo encountered old friends and new faces, each with their own battles, burdens, and hopes. Their stories intertwined, weaving a tapestry of struggle, redemption, and relentless will. But the greatest challenge lay ahead. The Shade Regent, the monarch of shadows, returned with a grim offering, more insidious than before. It whispered promises of forbidden power in exchange for loyalty, a dark covenant that promised dominion but demanded nearly every shred of humanity in return. Jin-Woo rejected the offer once again, choosing the perilous path of resistance. The monarch's war began in earnest. Gates erupted across the globe, spilling forth armies of monsters and twisted shadows with terrifying new horrors never seen before. Cities burned, trembling under relentless assault. The line between hunter and hunted blurred. Jin-Woo's fellowship, the shadowless hunters, stood firm. They fought tactical battles in the ruins of civilization, using wit and unity to survive the overwhelming odds. Each victory was a hard-won ember in a night seemingly endless. Yet hope flickered, ever fragile. The war wore on, testing every resolve and hardening every blade. Jin-Woo faced betrayals, losses, and impossible choices. Yet unlike the chosen hunters born of the system, his power came from an unbreakable human spirit, one forged in trials much harsher than magic. As the conflict neared its peak, Jin-Woo ventured into the heart of the enemy's domain, a realm where shadows twisted like living nightmares. There, he uncovered secrets that would shape the fate of worlds, ancient truths about monarchs, systems, and the immense cost of power. The final battle awaited, the moment where legend and destiny would collide. In the darkness, Jin-Woo steeled himself for a fight not just for survival, but for the soul of humanity. Would you like me to continue part 3 next? It will cover the climactic battles, emotional sacrifices, and Jin-Woo's ultimate triumph as a hunter who never gained the system. Just say, continue part 3, when ready. Continuing with part 2 of the cinematic narrated story, expanding on Sung Jin-Woo's journey without the system, deeper conflicts, new allies, and the looming monarch threat. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is part 2 of the story about what if Sung Jin-Woo never got the system. Before we start, please support the channel with likes, comments, and sharing. Subscribe for more amazing content. Let's dive in. The dawn broke misty and gray over the battlefield where Jin-Woo and his comrades had pushed back the darkness. Yet even triumph bore the bitter taste of sacrifice. Many hunters lay wounded, some were lost forever. But Jin-Woo's spirit, unbroken and fierce, sparked a new flame for those who refused to bow. In the weeks that followed, Jin-Woo sought out knowledge and strength beyond the ruins of battle. The Hunter Association, a crumbling edifice of politics and secrets, proved just as dangerous as the monsters breathing beneath the earth. Corrupt factions and shadowy figures manipulated gates and power for their own ends. Jin-Woo walked carefully through this maze of intrigue, gaining allies from unexpected places and enemies hidden within trusted ranks. He learned that the monarchs awakening in the shadows were preparing for a war unlike any before, a war that would decide the fate of all humanity. His own power, limited though it was, became a beacon for the weak and forgotten, a rallying point for those forsaken by the system's blessing. Together, they built a fellowship of hunters with no magic but boundless courage. Amidst tense negotiations and skirmishes, Jin-Woo encountered old friends and new faces, each with their own battles, burdens, and hopes. Their stories intertwined, weaving a tapestry of struggle, redemption, and relentless will. But the greatest challenge lay ahead. The Shade Regent, the monarch of shadows, returned with a grim offering, more insidious than before. It whispered promises of forbidden power in exchange for loyalty, a dark covenant that promised dominion but demanded nearly every shred of humanity in return. Jin-Woo rejected the offer once again, choosing the perilous path of resistance. The monarch's war began in earnest. Gates erupted across the globe, spilling forth armies of monsters and twisted shadows with terrifying new horrors never seen before. Cities burned, trembling under relentless assault. The line between hunter and hunted blurred. Jin-Woo's fellowship, the shadowless hunters, stood firm. They fought tactical battles in the ruins of civilization, using wit and unity to survive the overwhelming odds. Each victory was a hard-won ember in a night seemingly endless. Yet hope flickered, ever fragile. The war wore on, testing every resolve and hardening every blade. Jin-Woo faced betrayals, losses, and impossible choices. Yet unlike the chosen hunters born of the system, his power came from an unbreakable human spirit, one forged in trials much harsher than magic. As the conflict neared its peak, Jin-Woo ventured into the heart of the enemy's domain, a realm where shadows twisted like living nightmares. There, he uncovered secrets that would shape the fate of worlds, ancient truths about monarchs, systems, and the immense cost of power. The final battle awaited, the moment where legend and destiny would collide. In the darkness, Jin-Woo steeled himself for a fight not just for survival, but for the soul of humanity. Night had thickened around the shattered city like a suffocating blanket of shadows. Flames flickered across the horizon, painting the sky in ominous hues of orange and violet, as the relentless war between hunters and encroaching darkness escalated to a fever pitch. Sung Jin-Woo stood steadfast amidst the chaos, eyes blazing with fierce resolve. His blade, worn and battle-scarred, reflected the flickering inferno, a testament to the wars he had fought without the blessings bestowed upon others. He was the hunter who had never received the system's power, but his spirit blazed brighter than any supernatural gift. Gates erupted violently across the land, rupturing reality and spilling forth monstrous legions, horrors born of shadow and nightmare. These were not simple beasts but creatures twisted by the will of the monarchs themselves. Their numbers overwhelmed cities and kingdoms alike, turning streets into battlegrounds and homes into tombs. But Jin-Woo and his fellowship, the shadowless hunters, as they had come to be called, stood firm. They were hunters stripped of miraculous power yet fortified with unyielding determination and unity. Tonight, the air simmered with the promise of a final confrontation, the decisive battle that would etch their legacy, or doom them to oblivion. Jin-Woo marshaled his comrades in the ruins of a once grand city plaza, the air thick with smoke and the scent of burning stone. Tonight, he began, voice steady and commanding, "We fight not as weakened hunters, but as the shield of humanity. Stand with me, and we end this nightmare. Together." Their shouts of assent echoed through the night, a sound forged in hope and desperation. The first wave of shadows surged forth like a tidal wave, monstrous limbs shredding the air and eyes glowing with malice. Jin-Woo met the foremost attacker with a lethal strike, his blade slicing through the swirling darkness with a clarity born of countless trials. Around him, his comrades moved like a choreographed storm, arrows flying, blades flashing, magic flickering where it could. But it was Jin-Woo's raw leadership and tactical mastery that turned the tide. Without the system, he compensated through precision and intuition honed in blood and fire. Monsters fell, shadow wraiths dissipated, but the battle was far from over. Amidst the chaos, the Shade Regent emerged, a towering figure wreathed in black flames and twisted shadows, its presence warping reality itself. It came not just as an enemy but a king surveying its doomed domain. With a voice like the grinding of ancient bones, it addressed Jin-Woo. "You deny the power I offer. Such foolish pride will be your downfall." Jin-Woo tightened his grip on his sword, eyes unwavering. "Power given without sacrifice is no power at all. I fight for those who choose to stand, not for shadows that enslave." Their clash shook the very earth, steel against shadow, determination against inevitable darkness. The battle raged with an intensity that tested the heart and soul. Jin-Woo's every move was a dance with death, a sequence of blows and parries driven by will rather than power. His comrades fought alongside him with fierce loyalty, embodying the spirit of hunters who had been denied greatness yet reclaimed their destiny through courage. As dawn approached, the final tides of battle turned. With a decisive strike, Jin-Woo shattered the Shade Regent's dark core, breaking the monarch's hold over the realm. The battlefield grew silent but heavy with sacrifice. Many lay broken, yet humanity had endured. Standing among the ruins, Jin-Woo looked to the rising sun, not as a chosen hero, but as a man who carved his legend in the absence of miracles. The legacy he forged was not one of supernatural gifts, but of unyielding human spirit and the courage to fight on, no matter the darkness ahead. The dust had barely settled on the battlefield when echoes of Sung Jin-Woo's legend began to ripple far beyond the city limits. Hunters across distant lands spoke in hushed tones of the man who rose without the grace of the system, a man who embodied the unyielding spirit of all humanity. Yet Jin-Woo's journey was far from complete. The monarch's shadows still stretched across dimensions, and new threats simmered beneath the surface. But his victory had awakened something unexpected, a spark of hope. Communities once ravaged by monsters began organizing themselves anew. Jin-Woo's example inspired hunters and civilians alike to face darkness with courage. He traveled tirelessly, sharing knowledge, training new hunters, and forging alliances that promised strength born not of magic, but of will. In the months and years that followed, the world changed. The gates that once split reality still loomed, but humanity no longer trembled before them. Jin-Woo's shadowless hunters formed the backbone of a new era, a testament that power could be redefined. While the system remained a mystery locked away from him, the legacy Jin-Woo crafted was a beacon for those denied miracles. His fight taught that strength lies within, unbound by gifts or curses. And so, the legend of the hunter without the system echoed through time, reminding all that even without magic, the human spirit can rise to greatness. Thank you for experiencing this saga. Support the channel for more incredible stories and upcoming parts. Until then, remember, even without power, the human spirit can shine brightest in the darkest night.